Two tiny golden retriever puppies, barely 2 months old, lay helpless on the edge of a blazing Texas highway, their tiny bodies bound with black tape, mouths sealed shut, gasping for air under the unforgiving summer sun. Cars sped past, trucks roared by, people glanced and kept driving. Hour after hour, their cries grew weaker, their eyes slowly closed, until something unthinkable happened. The summer heat in Austin, Texas clung to the air like a heavy blanket, and the blazing sun scorched the busy I-35 highway without mercy. Samuel Sam Turner, 50 years old, trudged slowly along the narrow pedestrian path beside the roaring traffic, his worn-out work boots scuffing the cracked concrete. At 6 feet tall, Sam had the kind of weathered look that came from decades of hard labor. His skin was tanned and rough, etched with deep lines from years spent beneath unforgiving suns. His dark brown hair, now streaked heavily with gray, clung damply to his forehead beneath the sweat-soaked brim of a faded baseball cap. A short, uneven beard framed his square jawline, lending him an air of quiet resilience, though his pale blue eyes betrayed the weight he carried inside. Sam was a man who had learned how to endure. Once, years ago, he had dreams of starting his own construction business, of raising a family, of growing old with his wife, Marie. But life had been unkind. Marie had passed away from cancer 5 years earlier, and since then, Sam's world had grown small and silent. He worked long shifts at a local warehouse, unloading trucks and stacking boxes for minimum wage. But just 2 weeks ago, his hours had been cut. Rent was overdue, bills were piling up, and yet, despite everything, Sam clung stubbornly to one belief: kindness still mattered. The traffic on I-35 thundered endlessly, semis roaring by, horns blaring, heat shimmering above the asphalt. Sam walked past tall metal guardrails when something faint reached his ears. At first, he thought it was just the whine of an engine, but then he stopped, holding his breath. There it was again, a tiny, desperate whimper. Sam turned his head, scanning the patch of overgrown weeds and brittle grass between the guardrail and a stretch of rocky embankment. The sound came again, weaker this time, almost swallowed by the rush of cars. His chest tightened as he stepped closer, his steel-toed boots crunching on the gravel. Then he saw them. Two tiny golden retriever puppies, no more than 8 weeks old, lay huddled against a rusted chain-link fence. Their soft golden fur was filthy and matted, sticking to their thin, trembling bodies. Both of their mouths were sealed shut with thick strips of black duct tape, their tiny front and back legs bound so tightly that their paws were swollen and raw. The taller puppy had a faint white streak running down his nose and big, pleading brown eyes that glimmered beneath layers of dirt. The smaller one's ribs were sharply visible beneath his fragile skin, his breathing shallow and ragged, every inhale a struggle. Sam froze, his heartbeat roaring in his ears. For a moment, the whole world seemed to fall silent, just the sight of two helpless lives abandoned to die under the punishing sun. Anger hit him first, hot and sharp. Who could do this? What kind of cruelty would leave these babies tied up, suffocating in the Texas heat? But the anger was quickly drowned by fear. One of the puppies barely moved, his little chest rising and falling so faintly Sam thought he might already be gone. Cars rushed past, throwing up clouds of dust and hot exhaust. Sam glanced at the highway, watching drivers speed by, oblivious, or maybe indifferent, to what was happening just a few feet from the road. No one slowed down, no one stopped. Sam dropped to his knees, his rough palms shaking as he reached for the first puppy. His fingers fumbled clumsily with the sticky black tape, tugging desperately until the material finally gave way with a painful snap. The tiny golden body jolted as the tape came free, and the puppy gasped, drawing in his first full breath in hours. "It's okay, little one," Sam whispered, his voice breaking. "I've got you now." The second puppy was weaker, his eyes half closed, lips trembling beneath the oppressive heat. Sam's vision blurred with tears as he tore the tape away from the tiny muzzle, wincing as the sticky adhesive ripped delicate strands of fur. The puppy let out the faintest whimper, so fragile it broke Sam's heart in two. Sam slid his big calloused hands beneath their frail bodies, cradling them against his chest as though they were made of glass. Both were burning with heat, their soft fur damp with sweat. Just then, the ground trembled as a semi-truck thundered by, sending a gust of scorching wind whipping against Sam's face. The noise made the taller puppy flinch violently, his tiny body jerking in fear. Sam held them tighter, shielding them from the chaos of the highway, his jaw set, his mind spiraling between panic and determination. He couldn't just leave them here, but a wave of helplessness washed over him. He didn't have money for a vet. He barely had enough to feed himself, let alone 2 sick, injured puppies. His landlord had already warned him twice about late rent. Bringing them home might mean more problems, more debt, more heartache. And yet, as Sam stared down at those 2 tiny, shivering lives, he knew there was no choice to make. He couldn't walk away. Not from them. "They didn't deserve this," he murmured, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. One of the puppies stirred slightly, pressing his wet nose weakly into Sam's shirt, as though seeking comfort. Sam swallowed hard, tightening his grip. He glanced back toward the rush of cars, watching another dozen people drive past, not a single one stopping. For a brief, bitter moment, he wondered if compassion was dying in this world, if people had grown so numb that they could pass suffering by without a second thought. But as the sun beat mercilessly down, Sam decided he wasn't going to be one of those people. Standing slowly, cradling both puppies in his arms, he whispered hoarsely, "You're coming with me." The smaller puppy gave a faint, exhausted sigh, his tiny paw twitching weakly. Sam adjusted his grip, shielding them from the heat as he made his way down the embankment. Every step felt heavier than the last, but there was no hesitation now. By the time he reached the shoulder of the road, his shirt was soaked with sweat, his legs trembling under the weight of exhaustion and emotion. But he held them tighter than ever, whispering softly, as if his voice alone could keep them alive. The traffic roared on, indifferent. The sun burned higher in the sky, and Samuel Turner, a man with nothing left, walked steadily toward his tiny rented home, with 2 fragile new reasons to keep fighting. The late afternoon heat still clung stubbornly to the air as Sam pushed open the creaky wooden door of his small rented house. The place was barely more than a single-room shack at the edge of Austin, its peeling walls and rattling ceiling fan offering little comfort against the sweltering summer. Inside, Sam gently placed the 2 fragile golden retriever puppies on an old blanket spread across the couch, their tiny chests rising and falling unevenly. He crouched down, wiping the sweat from his brow, his pale blue eyes clouded with worry. One of the puppies, the slightly larger one with the faint white streak on his nose, licked weakly at the edge of Sam's thumb when he offered a small cap of water. Sam exhaled in relief, but the smaller puppy, his ribs still visible beneath patches of tangled fur, kept his mouth firmly shut, refusing to swallow. His breathing was shallow, his tiny body trembling as if fighting to hold on. Sam's heart sank. He had no medical training, no supplies, nothing but a fierce determination to keep these tiny lives from fading away. His rough hands trembled as he tried again, this time dipping his finger in a bowl of diluted milk and brushing it gently against the smaller puppy's lips, whispering softly, "Come on, little guy, you have to try." But the puppy didn't respond. Panic stirred in Sam's chest. He didn't have the money for a full veterinary visit, but he knew someone who might help. He reached for his cracked old cell phone on the counter and scrolled until he found the number, saved years ago, Dr. Evelyn Brooks. Evelyn was a local veterinarian Sam had met 2 years ago when he rescued a stray kitten tangled in barbed wire behind the warehouse. She had treated the kitten for free and, in doing so, left a lasting impression on him. Evelyn was 38, tall and slender, with shoulder-length auburn hair often tied back loosely under a faded green bandana. Her hazel eyes always carried a quiet warmth, though deep in their depths was something heavy. Sam remembered she'd lost her husband, a firefighter, in an accident years ago. Maybe that loss made her gentler with fragile lives, human or animal. Sam hesitated for a moment, feeling guilty for calling her after so long, but pressed the number anyway. "Dr. Brooks? It's Sam Turner," he said, his voice cracking. I found 2 puppies on I-35. They're in bad shape." There was a pause, then her calm, steady voice came through. "Sam, listen to me. Bring them in, right now. I'll stay late and wait for you." He whispered his thanks, grabbed an old towel, and carefully wrapped the smaller puppy, securing the slightly stronger one against his chest. Sweat dripped down his temples as he hurried out the door. The sun hung low and unforgiving, baking the asphalt as he crossed the street to his battered old Ford Ranger. The engine groaned but started, and he steered toward the small animal clinic on the east side of town. The drive felt endless. Every red light was torture, every passing minute another stolen breath from the tiny life trembling in his arms. Sam glanced down at the smaller puppy cradled in the towel, his wet nose twitching faintly, but his eyelids fluttering. "Stay with me, buddy," Sam whispered, instinctively giving the little one a name. "You can't give up now." By the time he arrived at the East Austin Free Animal Clinic, the parking lot was nearly empty. The sign above the glass door flickered weakly, one of the neon letters burnt out. Inside, the waiting room smelled faintly of antiseptic and hay, a soft hum of machinery mixing with the muted whirring of ceiling fans. Evelyn appeared from the hallway, wiping her hands on a pale blue scrub top. Her expression shifted instantly when she saw the puppies. "Oh, Sam," she murmured, her voice catching slightly before she composed herself. "Bring them back here." The examination room was small but clean, filled with neatly arranged trays of syringes, tiny bottles of medicine, and stacks of gauze pads. Evelyn set Sonny on the padded table first, her skilled hands moving quickly yet gently. She checked his gums, heartbeat, and temperature. "He's weak, but he'll pull through with fluids and proper feeding," she said, glancing up with a reassuring smile. Then came Buddy. The moment she laid him on the table, her brows furrowed. His tiny paws were swollen where the tape had cut into his circulation. Faint bruises spread along his belly, and shallow cuts ringed his legs. Evelyn adjusted her stethoscope, listening carefully before exhaling slowly. "Severe dehydration, malnutrition, and... see these marks?" She gently lifted one of Buddy's hind legs, revealing angry red welts where the adhesive had torn skin. "He's been restrained for hours, maybe longer. And these bruises aren't from today. Someone's hurt them before." Sam clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. Who could do this to them? His voice was low, roughened by disbelief and anger. Evelyn didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. She moved quickly, setting up 2 small IV lines, one for each puppy. Sonny whimpered faintly at the prick of the needle, but Buddy didn't react at all, too weak to even resist. Sam stood at the corner of the room, his large frame hunched forward, his pale blue eyes fixed on every movement. He hated feeling powerless, watching strangers fight battles he couldn't win. After what felt like an eternity, Evelyn stepped back, removing her gloves. "I'll keep them here for an hour under observation. If they stabilize, you can take them home tonight. But Sam..." Her hazel eyes locked with his. "They're not out of danger yet, especially the little one." Sam nodded silently, his throat tight. He turned his gaze toward Buddy, who lay curled beneath the soft clinic blanket, his tiny chest rising ever so slightly with each shallow breath. Minutes stretched like hours. Evelyn quietly prepared electrolyte solutions and instructed him on feeding schedules, explaining how to massage Buddy's tiny throat to encourage swallowing. Sam memorized every word, committing it to heart. After a long silence, Evelyn touched his shoulder lightly. "Sam, I know you're struggling right now, but these two, they've been given a second chance. If anyone can give them a reason to fight, it's you." Her words settled heavily on him, warming a place deep inside that had long been cold. For years, since Marie's passing, his life had felt like a series of empty days. Work, sleep, repeat. But now, holding on to Sonny and Buddy, he felt a flicker of purpose return, fragile yet steady. When the IV drip slowed and Evelyn declared them stable enough to leave, Sam carefully lifted Buddy into his arms, wrapping him securely in the towel, while Sonny licked at his wrist with newfound strength. He looked up at Evelyn, his voice hoarse. "Thank you. I owe you." She shook her head softly, smiling faintly. "You don't owe me. Just take care of them, Sam. That's all the thanks I need." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting streaks of orange across the clinic's windows, Sam stepped outside into the warm Austin evening. The air smelled faintly of asphalt and distant barbecue smoke, but for the first time that day, he breathed a little easier. Cradling Buddy against his chest and holding Sonny close in his other arm, Sam whispered quietly to them both, "We're going home, and we're going to figure this out together." The cicadas screamed into the humid Texas night as Sam stepped out of the small convenience store, carrying a single brown paper bag pressed tightly against his chest. Inside were just a few cans of puppy formula, a small bag of soft food, and the cheapest loaf of bread he could find for himself. He stared for a moment at the receipt crumpled in his palm, the numbers glaring back at him, and felt the weight of his dwindling savings press harder against his ribs. When he returned to his tiny home, the living room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of an old table lamp, missing its shade. On the couch, Sonny was curled into a ball, his small golden body rising and falling steadily in sleep. Buddy, though, lay sprawled on the blanket, his breathing uneven, his tiny chest trembling with each strained inhale. Sam set the groceries on the counter and crouched beside them, his rough hands resting gently on Buddy's side. "Easy, little one," he whispered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. He'd spent the past 3 nights barely sleeping, his ears attuned to every sound, terrified that he'd wake to silence. He mixed the formula carefully, following the instructions Dr. Brooks had given him, heating it slightly before filling the tiny rubber syringe. Sonny stirred when he approached, his big brown eyes blinking sleepily, while Buddy only gave a faint twitch when the warm liquid touched his lips. Sam sighed and massaged Buddy's small throat gently, coaxing him to swallow. "Come on, fight with me," he murmured, his voice trembling. The clock ticked past midnight as Sam sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, feeding Sonny, cleaning their bedding, and folding old newspapers into layers for the crate. He'd been living off instant noodles and coffee, cutting his own meals in half so the puppies would have enough. His ribs showed faintly beneath his faded t-shirt, but he didn't care. Later, lying on the living room floor with a thin blanket thrown over his legs, Sam stared at the cracked ceiling. Buddy's uneven breaths filled the silence, and Sam found himself whispering into the darkness, "Just stay, okay? I'll handle the rest. Just stay." The sleepless hours brought memories, uninvited and sharp. He saw Marie, his late wife, kneeling on the kitchen floor of their old house, laughing softly as a litter of golden puppies stumbled clumsily across the tiles. He remembered her voice, teasing him for resisting her dream of adopting dogs, because he didn't want fur everywhere. The memory cut deep now, a bittersweet ache. She'd wanted this, a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the sound of paws. Sam swallowed hard, rubbing his tired eyes, whispering into the empty room, "You'd have loved them, Marie." A soft knock on the door startled him from his thoughts. He pulled himself up, expecting perhaps a late delivery, but when he opened it, Clara Johnson, his neighbor from across the street, stood there holding a small basket. Clara was 45, tall and lean with wavy chestnut brown hair pulled into a loose bun. Her face was lightly freckled, framed by laugh lines, though her hazel green eyes always seemed to carry a constant spark of determination. She worked long shifts at Baker's Rise, a small local bakery, and was known in the neighborhood for her warmth, but also her straightforwardness. She didn't mince words when she thought someone was making a mistake. "I heard the puppies crying," Clara said softly, glancing past Sam into the dim room. "Sam, what on earth are you doing? You can't afford to keep them, not like this." Sam hesitated, running a hand through his graying hair, his voice low and rough. "I can't just give them up, Clara. Not after what they've been through." Clara sighed, her eyes softening as she handed him the basket. Inside were a few small bags of dry puppy food, a couple cans of soft meat, and even a hand-knit blanket with pale yellow edges. "I went by the shelter earlier today," she said gently. "They can help, you know. Free shots, food if you ask. But Sam, this is going to drain you." "I'll figure it out," Sam said firmly, his jaw tightening in quiet defiance. Clara studied his face for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "All right," she said finally, her tone resigned but not unkind. "I'll talk to a friend at the Austin Animal Aid Society. They sometimes give out leftover supplies, and I'll drop off some food from the bakery when I can." Sam's chest tightened with quiet gratitude. He gave her a faint, weary smile. "Thank you, Clara. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Just keep those babies alive," she said softly, turning to leave. Hours passed, the house swallowed in silence, except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan and Buddy's shallow breaths. Around 2 in the morning, Sam awoke suddenly to a faint whimper, his instincts pulling him upright. He crossed the room and knelt beside the blanket where Buddy lay curled. The puppy's small body was hot beneath his palm. Too hot. "No, no, no," Sam whispered, his voice cracking as panic set in. He fetched the thermometer Dr. Brooks had given him and nearly dropped it when the reading flashed. 104.8 degrees Fahrenheit. A fever. Sonny pawed at Sam's leg, whining softly as if sensing the urgency. Without wasting a second, Sam grabbed an old towel, carefully wrapping Buddy in it, his hands trembling as he secured the tiny form against his chest. He glanced toward the sleeping Sonny, hesitating only for a breath before gently placing him in the basket Clara had brought, tucking the knitted blanket over him. Throwing on his worn boots, Sam raced into the humid night air, his heartbeat pounding louder than the chorus of cicadas. The streetlights along the narrow road cast long, wavering shadows as he sprinted to his battered Ford Ranger, placing both puppies carefully on the passenger seat. As he started the engine, his mind was a whirlwind of panic, guilt, and determination. Every breath Buddy took felt like a borrowed moment, and Sam whispered shakily as he shifted into gear, "Hang on, little one. Just hang on." The tires screeched against the cracked pavement as he sped toward the East Austin clinic, knowing that every second mattered now. The fluorescent lights inside the East Austin Free Animal Clinic flickered faintly as Sam sat slumped against the wall outside the examination room, his calloused hands clenched tightly in his lap. He could hear the soft hum of machines and the muffled voices of Dr. Evelyn Brooks and her assistant as they worked on Buddy. His heart pounded painfully, every passing minute stretching endlessly. Finally, Evelyn stepped out, removing her gloves with deliberate slowness. Her hazel eyes met his, and she spoke softly but firmly. "He's stable for now, Sam, but Buddy's condition is critical. He's severely dehydrated, his immune system's fragile, and his fever isn't breaking as quickly as I hoped." Her expression tightened as she hesitated before adding, "If his body doesn't respond to the fluids in the next 48 hours, his chances of surviving drop to around 30%. Sam swallowed hard, his throat dry. 30%, he repeated under his breath, the words sinking like lead into his chest. He turned his gaze to the floor, feeling a helplessness he hadn't known in years. Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I'll do everything I can," she said gently. "You just need to focus on keeping Sonny cared for at home and being ready for Buddy when he's strong enough to leave." Sam nodded silently, thanked her, and drove back to his small house with Sonny curled on the passenger seat, his tiny head resting against Sam's forearm. That night, lying awake on the couch while Sonny slept curled against his side, Sam stared at the ceiling fan turning lazily above. The sound of it mixed with the soft hum of passing cars outside, but his thoughts were loud, restless. The next morning, exhaustion painted dark circles beneath his pale blue eyes, as Sam made a decision he hadn't wanted to face. He needed a second job. He stopped by Jack's Roadhouse Diner, a small family-owned eatery on the outskirts of town. The diner's neon sign buzzed faintly in the heat, and the scent of fried bacon hung thick in the air. Behind the counter stood Jack Whitmore, the diner's owner, a burly man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair combed back neatly, a matching mustache, and a stern face softened only by the faintest crow's feet at the corners of his deep-set brown eyes. Jack was known around town for his rough edges and blunt honesty, but also for quietly giving second chances to people who needed them. Sam approached the counter, removing his faded baseball cap and rubbing the brim nervously. "Jack, I'm looking for extra work. Nights, weekends, whatever you've got." Jack studied him for a long moment, his arms crossed over a checkered apron. "Turner, you look like hell," he said plainly, but not unkindly. "Warehouse hours get cut." Sam nodded. "Yeah, and I've got some mouths to feed now." Jack's gaze softened just slightly. He'd heard whispers around town about Sam rescuing 2 abandoned puppies, and though he wasn't the sentimental type, there was something in Sam's tired eyes that struck a chord. "I can put you on night cleanup and dishwashing," Jack said finally. "Pays minimum, but it's honest work." Sam breathed out, shoulders sagging in relief. "I'll take it." For the next week, Sam's life became a relentless cycle of exhaustion. Days were spent caring for Sonny, syringe feeding him carefully, washing his bedding, and calling Evelyn for updates on Buddy. Nights, he scrubbed greasy pans and wiped down sticky counters at Jack's diner until 2 in the morning, his back aching and feet blistered. By the time he got home, he'd collapse on the couch beside Sonny, setting his alarm to wake every 2 hours to check his phone, hoping for a missed call from Evelyn with better news. But each time, there was nothing new. Buddy remained weak, fighting silently. Then, one evening as Sam sorted through the small pile of unopened mail stacked on the kitchen counter, he froze. Among the envelopes was a thick, creased letter from his landlord, Edwin Chambers. Edwin was a lean, balding man in his mid-60s with sharp cheekbones and a perpetually furrowed brow, the kind of landlord who treated late rent notices like holy scripture. Sam unfolded the letter slowly, his eyes scanning the neat, cold print. Final notice. Amount due, $1,240. Payment must be made in full within 10 days, or eviction proceedings will begin. Sam's hands trembled slightly as he set the paper down. His savings were already drained. What little he earned at the diner barely covered food for himself and Sonny, let alone Buddy's mounting medical bills. The walls of the tiny house felt like they were closing in on him, the silence pressing heavy against his chest. Sonny, sensing his unease, padded softly over and nudged Sam's leg with his tiny wet nose. Sam picked him up, hugging him close, burying his face in the puppy's soft golden fur. "I'm not letting you go," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm not leaving either of you behind. I promise, Sonny." For a while, he just sat there in the dim room, rocking gently, his tears soaking into the puppy's coat. Memories of Marie drifted through his mind again, her laughter, her voice telling him they'd always figure things out together. He wondered what she'd say if she could see him now, clinging to 2 tiny lives, as though they were the only thing tethering him to the world. Later that night, Sam stepped outside to get some air, standing barefoot on the cracked pavement under a sky dusted with faint stars. He leaned against the railing, scanning the distance where the highway stretched, faint headlights glinting in the dark. And that's when he noticed it. The faint red blink of a traffic camera perched high above the interstate, right near the spot where he'd found Sonny and Buddy. His chest tightened. A thought formed quickly, sharp and unshakable. If there had been a camera there, maybe, just maybe, it had caught the people who abandoned them. He didn't know what he'd find, but he knew one thing with certainty. Whoever had left those puppies to die wouldn't get away with it. With Sonny pressed gently against his chest, Sam whispered into the warm summer night, "We're not letting this go." The morning sun had barely risen above the Austin skyline when Sam parked his battered Ford Ranger outside the Austin Police Department. The air was heavy with humidity, and beads of sweat rolled down his temples as he carried Sonny in a small basket tucked against his chest. Buddy was still at home, resting on the soft blanket Clara had knitted, his breathing steadier but fragile. Sam's pale blue eyes were bloodshot from sleepless nights, but there was a new edge of determination in them today. He couldn't shake the image of that blinking red traffic camera near the highway. Something inside told him it might hold the answers he needed. Inside the station, the cool blast of air conditioning hit him, along with the faint scent of coffee and paperwork. A uniformed officer directed him to a small conference room where Detective Miguel Alvarez was reviewing files. Miguel was 41, of medium build, standing just under 6 feet with sharp, angular features and a clean-shaven jaw. His short jet-black hair was neatly styled, and his dark brown eyes carried the kind of quiet intensity of someone who had seen too much of the world's cruelty. A faint scar ran diagonally along his left cheek, barely noticeable but hinting at a past incident he rarely discussed. Later, Sam would learn Miguel had spent 6 years in narcotics, where an undercover bust had nearly cost him his life. That experience left him meticulous, distrustful, and relentless when he set his mind to something. "Mr. Turner," Miguel greeted, his deep voice steady but curt, "I understand you're the one who found the puppies on I-35. Sam nodded, settling into the chair across from him. "I saw a traffic camera near where I found them," he said, adjusting Sonny gently in the basket. "I was hoping maybe it caught something." Miguel leaned back, tapping a pen thoughtfully against the table. "We've already pulled the footage." He reached over and switched on a monitor. Grainy black and white video flickered to life, showing a stretch of highway bathed in harsh summer light. Sam's stomach clenched as he watched. At the 23-second mark, a black pickup truck slowed abruptly on the shoulder. The driver's side door opened, and a shadowy figure climbed out, holding what appeared to be a small cardboard box. Without hesitation, the man set it down on the roadside grass, glanced around quickly, then climbed back into the truck. The vehicle sped off, leaving the box trembling slightly as its contents shifted. Sam clenched his fists, his jaw tightening until it ached. Sonny whimpered faintly, sensing his tension. Miguel's gaze never left the screen. "We traced the license plate," he said flatly. "The truck's registered to a man named Darren Cole." Sam frowned, unfamiliar with the name. "Cole's already on our radar," Miguel continued, flipping open a folder thick with documents. "We suspect he's part of an illegal puppy mill operation operating out of Travis County. We believe they've been breeding dogs in poor conditions, abandoning the sick ones by highways to avoid veterinary costs. Your puppies are likely just two of many." Sam's chest tightened, anger simmering beneath his ribs. "So you're telling me someone just throws them away when they're no longer profitable?" His voice was low but laced with disbelief. Miguel nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Sam's first instinct was rage. He imagined confronting Darren Cole, demanding answers, but fear crept in alongside it. If there was a larger network behind this, getting involved could put him, Sonny, and Buddy in danger. Miguel seemed to read the conflict on his face. "We're not asking you to put yourself in harm's way," the detective said calmly, "but we do need your cooperation. I want you to sign a statement about when and where you found the puppies. It might help us secure a warrant." Sam exhaled slowly, nodding. "Anything you need," he said, his voice steady despite the tightness in his throat. For the next hour, Sam recounted everything. The sounds, the heat, the trembling bodies of the two tiny pups. Miguel's pen scratched steadily across the form, capturing every detail. When they were finished, Sam signed his name at the bottom, with hands that still trembled faintly. Back at home later that day, Buddy stirred weakly on the blanket, his eyelids fluttering open as Sonny climbed beside him, licking his little brother's ear as though urging him to keep fighting. Sam knelt beside them, brushing a hand over their soft golden fur. "I promise," he whispered, "no one's ever going to hurt you again." But the battle wasn't over yet. 2 days later, Miguel called with an update. The investigation had uncovered evidence linking Darren Cole to a warehouse on the outskirts of Austin, believed to house dozens of neglected animals. "We're moving in tonight," Miguel said. "You might want to stay home, Sam. Things could get ugly." Sam agreed, but spent the evening pacing his living room, unable to shake the tension gnawing at his gut. At midnight, Miguel called again, his voice lower, rougher this time. "We raided the warehouse. We found over 30 puppies crammed into filthy cages. No food, no water. Some of them didn't make it, Sam." Sam sat down heavily, his pale blue eyes burning as tears blurred his vision. Sonny rested his head against Sam's leg, as if trying to comfort him. But then Miguel added, softer now, "We got them, Sam. Cole and his crew. They're in custody." Relief washed over him in waves, but his breath caught when he turned to see Buddy, sitting upright on unsteady legs for the first time in days. The little pup's big brown eyes blinked at him, and Sonny barked softly, wagging his tail for the first time since the rescue. Sam reached out, pulling them both into his arms, his voice breaking. "You made it, Buddy. You're safe now." For the first time in weeks, the weight on his shoulders felt just a little lighter. The cicadas hummed lazily beneath the heavy Texas sun as Sam sat on the wooden steps of his porch. Buddy and Sonny curled against his legs. The warm breeze carried the faint scent of blooming crepe myrtles from across the street, a stark contrast to the dark weeks behind them. For the first time in months, Sam allowed himself a quiet smile. Buddy, once too weak to lift his head, was sitting upright, tail wagging softly, while Sonny stretched his tiny paws over Sam's boots, licking them absent-mindedly. Inside the house, an unexpected sound cut through the silence, Sam's phone vibrating against the counter. He picked it up to find a flood of notifications, comments, messages, and friend requests. Confused, he tapped on one of the links. A post from Dr. Evelyn Brooks had gone viral overnight. The headline read, "Local man rescues 2 puppies abandoned on highway, fighting for their lives together." The article contained pictures Evelyn had taken during their first night at the clinic. Sam holding the tiny, trembling bodies of Buddy and Sonny, his face shadowed by exhaustion and worry. It detailed their recovery journey, the cruelty they endured, and Sam's sacrifices to save them. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, filling social media feeds across Austin. Sam stared at the phone, stunned. He had never been one for attention. He liked the quiet anonymity of his small life. But now, strangers were leaving heartfelt messages and offers of help. Later that afternoon, Clara Johnson arrived with a wicker basket filled with fresh bread and cupcakes from Baker's Rise. Her tall, lean frame cast a long shadow on the porch as she grinned at Sam. "You're famous," she teased, handing him the basket. "People can't stop talking about you and the puppies. Half the town's ready to adopt them already." Sam chuckled softly, shaking his head. "They're not going anywhere," he said, scratching behind Sonny's ear. "They're family." Clara's grin widened as she crouched to stroke Buddy's soft golden fur. "Good," she said, "because I've got a plan." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" She laughed, tucking a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Only if you hate money. I've been thinking, you make amazing cinnamon rolls. What if we start a little handmade bakery stand right here on your porch? I'll help with supplies. You bake and people can donate or buy. Trust me, with your story all over social media, you won't be able to keep up with the demand." Sam hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. But Clara's enthusiasm was infectious. "You really think people would care that much?" "They already care, Sam," she said gently. "Let them." That evening, the two of them worked side by side preparing the stand. Clara painted a small wooden sign that read, "Turner's Treats," in looping letters, while Sam mixed dough in his cramped kitchen, sleeves rolled up and sweat streaking his temples. Sonny and Buddy sat nearby, tails thumping against the floor, watching curiously as the air filled with the sweet aroma of cinnamon and sugar. The next morning, as the sun rose, neighbors began stopping by. Some brought dog treats, others carried toys, blankets, and even small envelopes with cash tucked inside. Children knelt to pet Sonny and Buddy, who had quickly learned that sitting politely earned them belly rubs. Within hours, the tiny front yard was buzzing with chatter and laughter. One of the visitors, Nancy Palmer, a cheerful woman in her mid-50s with short silver hair and soft, round features, stepped forward holding a large envelope. Nancy ran a local nonprofit called Paws of Austin, dedicated to rescuing abused animals. She explained in her gentle, warm voice, "Sam, we've seen Evelyn's post, and we'd like to cover the entire cost of Sonny and Buddy's future veterinary care. Vaccinations, checkups, everything." Sam blinked, momentarily speechless. "You do that? For us?" Nancy smiled, her hazel eyes shining. "You've already done enough, Sam. You saved them. Let us take it from here." His throat tightened as he shook her hand, the weight on his shoulders lifting just slightly. In the following weeks, Sam's quiet life transformed. Where there had once been silence, his tiny house now brimmed with life. Barking, laughter, and the constant shuffle of visitors stopping by to meet Sonny and Buddy. The puppies had grown stronger, their golden coats shining under the sun, their playful personalities blossoming. Buddy, once timid and fragile, now wrestled enthusiastically with Sonny on the front lawn, tumbling clumsily into the grass while neighborhood kids cheered. Sam noticed the shift in himself, too. He'd spent years living in solitude, haunted by Marie's absence, working long hours just to stay afloat. But now, he woke each morning to soft puppy kisses and the smell of freshly baked bread. For the first time since her passing, the house felt like a home again. One late afternoon, as the golden light of sunset bathed the porch, Clara leaned against the railing, sipping iced tea. "Feels good, doesn't it?" she said quietly. Sam followed her gaze to the yard, where Buddy was chasing a tennis ball clumsily, while Sonny sat proudly by the treat stand, watching passers-by. "Yeah," he murmured, his voice low but steady. "Feels like maybe we've turned a corner." Clara smiled softly but said nothing, letting the peace of the moment linger. Just then, a mail carrier approached, handing Sam a crisp white envelope with the Austin Police Department seal. Sam tore it open cautiously, scanning the neatly printed letter inside. Subject, case update. Dear Mr. Turner, the individuals responsible for abandoning Sonny and Buddy have been formally charged and will face trial next month for multiple counts of animal cruelty. Your testimony will be essential. Sam lowered the letter slowly, his jaw tightening. Clara placed a gentle hand on his arm. "This is it," she said softly. "Justice." Sam glanced down at Sonny and Buddy, who now sat quietly by his feet, their bright brown eyes fixed on him, as if they somehow understood. He knelt, brushing a hand through their silky fur. "We're almost there," he whispered. "Almost." 6 months later, the scorching Texas summer had softened into late-season warmth, the kind that painted everything gold beneath the low, lingering sun. Sam stood barefoot on the small wooden porch of his modest house, his pale blue eyes reflecting the endless stretch of orange skies. In the yard below, Sonny and Buddy darted across the patchy grass, their sleek golden coats gleaming, tails wagging furiously as they tumbled over each other with the unbridled energy of life reclaimed. Buddy had grown the most. Once frail and fighting for every breath, he now stood strong on sturdy little legs, his brown eyes bright and full of curiosity. Sonny remained the more playful one, quick to bark when a passing car rumbled down the street or a stranger approached the gate, always taking it upon himself to be the protector. Together, they had transformed from fragile survivors into two joyful souls thriving under Sam's care. Sam leaned on the railing, the warm breeze rustling his graying hair as he watched them. For the first time in years, his lips curved into an easy smile, one born not from relief, but from something deeper, contentment. Whispering softly under his breath, he said, "Because of you two, I finally know I still have a family." Inside the house, the faint aroma of cinnamon lingered, remnants from the early morning baking he'd done for the Turner's treat stand that Clara continued helping him manage. Business had slowed a little as the story faded from the front page, but neighbors still came by regularly to buy pastries and give Sonny and Buddy belly rubs. What once had been a silent, lonely home was now filled with laughter, conversation, and the rhythmic patter of little paws. But today wasn't an ordinary day. Today was the day the people who had abandoned Sonny and Buddy, those who had tied them with black tape and left them to die beneath the blazing sun, would face justice. Sam smoothed down the wrinkles of his button-up shirt, one of the few nicer pieces of clothing he owned, and gently called out, "Come on, boys!" Sonny bounded up the porch steps immediately, ears perked and tail wagging, while Buddy trotted behind, head tilted curiously. He crouched to fasten their leashes, his hands steady, but his heart pounding. The Austin courthouse was a towering limestone building, its grand columns casting long shadows on the steps where reporters were already gathering. Cameras flashed intermittently, journalists murmuring as people filed inside. Sam wasn't used to attention, but Clara had insisted on coming along for support, her tall, lean frame standing steady beside him. She wore a pale blue blouse and carried herself with her usual quiet strength, her hazel green eyes scanning the crowd. Inside, the courtroom was solemn, its wooden benches polished to a soft shine. At the front sat Judge Marissa Kane, a woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked dark hair neatly tied back, her sharp features framed by thin-rimmed glasses. Known across Travis County for her unwavering dedication to animal welfare cases, Judge Kane had earned a reputation for fairness and composure under pressure. The defendants, Darren Cole and two accomplices, Ricky Hart and Lyle Morris, sat across the room with their lawyers. Darren, 35, had an unkempt scruffy beard, close-cropped dark hair, and restless hazel eyes that avoided looking at anyone. Ricky, a lanky man in his 40s with a gaunt face, chewed at his lip nervously, while Lyle, a heavy-set man with greasy blonde hair, kept his gaze fixed on the table, arms folded tightly across his chest. The prosecutor, Janet Holloway, stepped forward. Janet was in her early 40s, a striking woman with sharp cheekbones, fair skin, and dark auburn hair pinned into a sleek bun. Her voice was calm but firm as she addressed the court. "Your Honor, this case is not only about the suffering endured by two innocent puppies, but also about holding accountable those who exploit life for profit and discard it without remorse." As photos from the rescue were projected onto a large screen, the small, fragile bodies of Sonny and Buddy tied up, their fur matted and wet with sweat, the entire courtroom fell silent. A few jurors shifted uncomfortably, and someone in the back sniffled quietly. When it was Sam's turn to testify, his palms were damp, but his voice, though low, carried an unshakable weight. He described the sound of faint whimpers beneath the roar of the highway, the panic when he first saw the tape around their tiny legs, and the moment he thought Buddy might not make it. He recounted the sleepless nights, the fear, and the stubborn refusal to give up on them, even when he had almost nothing left. By the time he finished, a quiet hush settled over the courtroom. Even Judge Kane's composed expression softened slightly as she regarded him. When Darren Cole's lawyer attempted to defend his client, arguing financial hardship and a lack of intent to harm, Janet Holloway rose sharply in rebuttal. "Neglect is harm," she said, her voice ringing clearly. "Tying up living beings and leaving them in extreme heat is cruelty, plain and simple." After hours of testimony and deliberation, Judge Kane delivered the verdict. Guilty on multiple counts of animal cruelty. Darren Cole and his accomplices would each serve 4 years in state prison, and a new mandate would be issued across Travis County, strengthening animal protection laws and imposing harsher penalties on abandonment. Outside the courthouse, the bright Texas sun poured down on the gathering crowd. Reporters called Sam's name, cameras flashing as he stood at the top of the steps. Sonny and Buddy nestled beside him. Clara stood at his shoulder, her hand resting lightly on his arm, grounding him amidst the chaos. He glanced down at the 2 puppies who were wagging their tails wildly, oblivious to the weight of what had just happened. "Justice, boys," he murmured softly. "We got it." That evening back home, Sam settled into the old wooden rocking chair by the window. Sonny and Buddy curled up beside him. The warm light of sunset spilled through the glass, painting everything gold, the walls, the floor, even the tiny glint in Buddy's brown eyes. The air was quiet except for the soft hum of cicadas outside. For the first time since Marie's passing, Sam didn't feel alone. He rested his head back, closing his eyes as his fingers brushed through the soft fur of the 2 puppies. "We made it," he whispered, his voice steady now. "We're home." Sometimes, miracles don't come as flashes of light from the heavens. Sometimes, they come in the form of 2 tiny golden puppies abandoned on the side of a highway, and a broken man who found the strength to save them. Sam thought his story was over, but God had other plans. Through Sonny and Buddy, Sam discovered family again, hope again, and a reminder that no life, human or animal, is ever forgotten by His grace. Maybe today, someone out there is struggling just like Sam once was, feeling lost, alone, or invisible. But know this, God still works in mysterious ways. He puts the right souls on our path, sometimes with fur and wagging tails, to remind us that love can heal everything. If you believe God led Sam to Sonny and Buddy, leave an amen in the comments. Share this story to bless someone's day. Don't forget to subscribe so we can continue spreading stories of hope, miracles, and second chances. May God bless you and your loved ones, always.